Good afternoon, everybody. This is Andy Erskine with Management 2000. We are happy to be here today introducing our first podcast series called Franchising Stories. We have Ryan with us from Brandwide talking to us about the solutions to franchise roadblocks. Ryan, introduce yourself and give us a little background on Brandwide and Softfront.
Hi, Andy, and thank you so much for bringing us on. This is Ryan Arcoraci. I work with Brandwide. We started out about a little over 25 years ago as a CRM company back when CRM was a fairly new concept in the early 90s. But since then, we have done a lot. We've grown into a digital marketing company, and more recently, in the last 3 to 4 years, expanded into the franchise world, where we are developing franchise management software and franchise marketing for both the franchisor and the individual franchisees.
That's great. So how long have you been with Brandwide yourself?
I've for about 2 years, but I've been with Softfront for about 4 years now, since 2015. So I've gotten a lot of experience on both the small business end and then as well as working with some large franchises also. So both sides of the coin and both business sizes.
Okay, great. So really the background of this whole podcast concept is that as suppliers and franchisors, there are so many things that we've either seen or done ourselves that have either hurt us, they were funny, there were pain points that we had, and we found solutions. And what we want to talk about is the solution that you specifically have been able to provide to one of your clients. And so we'll just kind of really get into it right now, and love to start hearing the story. So,
Sure.
There's always hurdles, opportunities, pain points, and goals that are presented to you by a business client. Do you want to give us some insight into a specific one that really sticks out to you?
Sure. We have a franchise client that does shipping, and really across the board, it comes down to number one, defining a process from the top down. And not only defining that process, but having the tools and communication tools in place to make sure that the franchisees are connected to the franchisor, and really making sure everybody is on the same page. And oftentimes, when you've got, whether you have 20 franchisees or 200 franchisees, the larger the franchise gets, the more important the communication and connections are. So we find that, especially with the bigger franchises, it can be difficult to keep everybody on the same page, keep everybody consistent. So we provide the tools to enable that communication, to make sure everybody's working on the same page. They're all working together to grow the franchise and grow their individual businesses. So that was one of the real hurdles we've discovered primarily.
Okay. Great. And then how were you able to help your client overcome that? And what were some of the different things that you did to achieve the goals that they wanted to achieve?
Right. So the first thing we do is look at defining a process. And a lot of times a franchisor, especially if they're new, they may or may not have really thought about their process. And when I say process, I mean it's really detailed in terms of not only onboarding new franchisees, but once they're onboarded, what is their marketing and sales process? Are they tracking leads? Are they walking leads through a funnel or a workflow that they can track, and that corporate can also track from their end, to make sure that once the process is set, we know that it's going to be successful for them. But in order to create a process that's successful, we need to sit down with the client and look at how they're structured, who's doing what, how leads are being acquired, where they're coming from, and how they're filtered through a process to help the individual franchise owners convert them into new sales, new deals, and revenue. But without that process, you're kind of going at it willy-nilly. You don't really know what you're doing, and there's no structure. And when we all know when there's no structure or no process, that's when you have failure, and you're not, achieving the goals or the results you want. So the first thing we do typically is really help define the process, understand the franchise, every level, what they're doing, what they're offering, their products, their services, who their potential leads or customers are. We have to understand all of that, and then help them define a process on working with those demographics and that marketing type strategy.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's great. So, because you work with a lot of different franchisors, and of
Yep.
course, franchising encompasses so many different industries.
Right.
With the new age of technology and the different applications, the different channels of marketing, do you
Yep.
see that there's consistency over industries in the type of marketing channels that you're using to acquire clients for the individual franchisees?
I mean, I think there is, but I think there's a lack of consistency, which is why a franchise management tool is so important. The problem is that I think a lot of franchise owners or franchisees, they kind of want to do, which is fine. It's understandable. They want to be independent, but the problem is when you do that, you have a lack of consistent, like I said, a consistent process.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have a franchisee, you have maybe 300 franchisees or 100 franchisees, and they're not consistent, the results are all over the place. And the franchisees that could be improving by following a process, if they're not following a process and they're doing their own thing, they're not going to have as good of results as franchisees that are following a process, are consistent with their marketing and their sales. Um, so the results are going to be, not so good. But if everybody is consistent, if we create a consistent marketing strategy with consistent marketing materials, consistent email campaigns, consistent social media, consistent SEO, if everybody is doing that and that engine is running across the board, we found that the franchise in general is going to be way more successful over everybody kind of doing their own thing. So consistency is a huge factor in terms of what's going to make that franchise successful.
I think that's a really important point. Franchising is successful because consumers have a consistent experience, whether you're in Seattle or you're in New York City,
Right.
right? And, so many times in other aspects of the franchise, consistency is overlooked because
Right.
these, especially these emerging franchisors, are really focusing still on working in the business. And some of these things are just put to the side, or it's just not something that somebody told them that they needed to think about moving forward.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that if you look at the most successful franchises, and we all know who they are, McDonald's or any of these major franchises, there is a level of consistency and there's a level of discipline in what they're doing with their marketing. They stick to it. And if they have any kind of hiccups or issues, they fix it, but they continue to be consistent. And I think that's what really enables their success over time.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So when we talk about solutions, and obviously we've talked about, consistency, and that's a huge part of what you do with clients. What if we get a little bit more granular, what are some of the other solutions or what were the solutions that you implemented with this specific client to help them achieve the results that they want?
Right. So the first thing we do is we at the base level, we look at, do they have a tool that connects the franchisor corporate to the franchisees? And that's really important because number one, we want to have data and reporting. So data can be everything from customer data, demographics, age, gender, where they live, what they're purchasing. There's so much that comes with data. And data is gold in terms of marketing. So
Mm-hmm.
if in terms of the CRM or the franchise management tool, one of the things we do is come up with a plan to capture lead data that can be accessible from the franchisor level, but also accessible at the franchisee level. That is important to understand who's buying the products or services, what are these types of leads or customers looking like? Um, what are they spending on?
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to help to facilitate better marketing strategies. The other side of it is reporting. The CRM franchise management tool we have can provide custom reports. So a franchisor can understand what franchisees are being successful, why they're being successful, but also the franchisees that aren't performing as well, why they're not performing as well, what is the missing link there, and what can we do to solve that problem and make that better. So the reports are not only for sales and marketing, but they're also for operations, to understand what's working, what's not working, and it needs to be visible from all ends so that there is a clear understanding of what is effective and what's not, and where we could see areas for improvement.
I love
Um,
that. That's
yeah,
great.
right.
If for any of the franchisors listening to this, if you had to pick the, the most important data points, and let's stick to two, what would those be, or what you would recommend to track as far as data so that franchisors can and franchisees can make better business decisions on their marketing dollars?
Hmm. Right. Yeah. Or is that a question for me? I'm sorry. Is that
Yeah,
for?
yeah.
Oh, okay. I mean, I think one of the biggest things is the data on customers and prospects. I think one of the things that's overlooked not only on the franchise level but just on the small business level is a lot of people don't understand their customer. And I don't mean understand as this, the surface. They really have to understand the motivations their customers have, and why they choose that business, why they choose to purchase or spend their money with that particular service or product.
Mhm.
And a customer at a franchise level, for example, a shipping franchise, they need to understand the data of these are not consumers; these are more other businesses, B2B. So why are these businesses choosing this franchise? And in order to understand that, you need to acquire the data, which is what our CRM will gather. So really it's about acquiring that data and finding out why, but really getting deep into understanding your customer's motivation. And that's why a CRM is so important. And I think a lot of people overlook that.
Mhm.
They get customers and they're happy, but they don't understand their motivation. How do we keep that customer coming, and how do we get even more customers from that one customer? How do we get a referral network from their network of people they may know, 20 or 30 different people or other companies that company may know? How do we get the referrals from those
Yeah.
people as well? And that's another side of it that our tool can help with.
Well, we know referral business is some of the strongest business for any brand out there. And I can tell you specifically for Management 2000 that about 65% of our business is from referrals or
Right.
repeat business.
Right.
And so, we love to see that, and we love to track data with our clients. I think this is really important when I see companies that want to franchise their business is they have a successful business, but they don't really know why they're successful
Right.
because they haven't tracked the data that you've been talking about. And that's a
Exactly.
huge brain barrier that we have to help people work through so that they can understand the importance of that for the future.
Exactly. Right. Hmm.
So, what questions did you ask this specific client so that you could understand the real opportunity that they had?
Right. So the questions we ask really comes down to, I mean, sometimes creating a process, it's really asking what is your process? And how is it defined? What does it look like? Not only, at the corporate level, but at the individual franchisee level. And that that can take time, that can take a few months to really define a process. And when I say define a process, I mean literally write it out, have a sheet of paper or get on your computer and actually walk through a process and create a process. And that's something that they do.
Mhm.
Typically, once we ask them, they provide it. And then we look at how can our software fit into this process, streamline the process, and help make it smooth at the
Okay.
corporate level and at the franchisee level. Um, and once that process is defined, we ask other questions like, well, how are you connected? How do you want to be connected to the franchisees? And once you're connected, what how do you want to work with these franchisees in terms of sales and marketing and the process? So there's a lot oftentimes, and actually one of the things we've implemented recently is training, into franchisee training. So we have a learning management system in our CRM now that corporate can provide training videos, training documentation, and other things to help the franchisees continually train and onboard as they begin their journey with the franchise. Um, so once the process is defined, we look at, okay, do you want to push marketing materials to your franchisees? Do you want to set up a workflow for onboarding new franchisees?
Hmm.
Do you want to connect your franchisees to a learning management system so they can use the tools to learn more about, their individual operations and ways to make it more efficient and work together? Um, so that's really where it comes down to. There's so many aspects in terms of process, not only in operations, but also in marketing and sales, and of course, onboarding.
Hmm.
So we ask questions about all of that. And oftentimes, questions will come from more questions. And then we really refine the process more by asking. And it's not always a fun process, and it does take a lot of time. It's kind of boring. But if you don't address these things and get the process in place, um, you're going to have issues. So it's very important to create that, and we help work with them on
That's
that.
that's great.
Yeah,
Because understanding the questioning process is huge. Have
right.
you ever had any experiences when you ask such deep questions that your clients are almost put off by the questions that you ask when you really need the answer to them?
Not really. Not really. I think it's we learn on both sides, because once you start asking questions, more things come up that, oh, we
Hmm.
didn't think about that, or yeah, we should probably consider this.
Yeah.
So the deeper you get, the more you learn, but the better you refine the process, and that's what helps.
Hmm.
And it comes down to communication. Another thing about our tool is that it really creates a communication platform. We have a hub where people can communicate within the franchise. They can ask corporate questions. They can submit, tickets if they're having technical issues. All of those things can be worked into our system. So communication is key. We can't solve problems or improve things unless people are, asking questions or bringing up the problems. So we
Right. Or
can.
transparent about the issues that they're having.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So, did you have any obstacles in implementing the strategy with this client?
No, never. No, I'm kidding. No, it's always smooth. No, no. We do. The one of the biggest obstacles is, depending on where the franchisee is in their mindset. Some have been in business a long time. They're very experienced and they're very kind of set in their ways, which is okay. Um, but the thing we have as far as obstacles comes up, in terms of people wanting to be able to adapt to
Hmm.
technology. And some people are very um, set in their ways in terms of, I have my process, I've been doing this for years, it works for me. And that can work for them, but then the question always remains, well, what if it could be better? Or what if it could save you a lot of time? And what if it could, create less work for you? Um, so the hardest thing is getting people to be open-minded enough to try the technology, try different marketing avenues.
Hmm.
For example, social media. Some people who didn't grow up in the social media age may not be as, interested in using social media to market.
Hmm.
However, it's an amazing tool if you use it correctly. So if you don't want to tap into it, you may be missing out on opportunities. So again, the hardest thing has been trying to get people to adapt, depending on where they are in their mindset and their experience, to use the technology. But the ones that are open to it and the ones that are open to learning, and again, it comes down to getting out of your comfort zone sometimes and being willing to learn, um, to succeed with it. Um, they will be successful, and they have been successful with that attitude.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
So when you implemented this strategy and you got past, you know, the buy-in of the different people and the different franchisees in the network,
Yeah.
what were the results that you saw?
So we saw streamlined reporting, more reports. The
Mm-hmm.
more data, the more reports, the better we understand what's going on, what's working, what's not working. And that is extremely important. We saw more revenue, more sales, more successful streamlined operations. Everything was just running smoother. If you look at it like an engine, the engine was just running well. There was no issues. I shouldn't say there's no issues, but that's yeah. But it's just more smooth. Everything is
Okay.
going well, and there's with all of that data, all that information, and with the process defined, everything is just running smoother, and people are on the same page, and that's what really um, creates a success. And we look at it as a win-win. I mean, we win because we're providing a solution. We're happy. They're working with us. They're happy working with us, and we can continue to work with them and help them be successful. Um, but also on their end, they have more visibility, more consistency, like we talked about, more organization, which all combined together increase sales, more customer engagement, and just higher revenue. So it's
Yeah,
just a win-win for everybody on both sides.
that's great.
Yeah.
So what were what did you learn from working with this client? What were, from this whole experience with the onboarding, with going through developing the process, figuring out where the process can have Brandwide in it.
Yeah.
What did you learn from that?
I learned that there's a lot that people in terms of franchising may overlook or not think about. A lot of times, I think, especially emerging franchises, it's very exciting. It's very exciting when you get excited and you start to expand. There's a lot in that excitement you're going to miss if you don't look into the details, and that's not the fun part. But when you look into the details of your process, you'll find that you'll be more successful. But if you jump into things, start doing things without thinking about a process, that's where you're going to have some hiccups or some failures.
Mm-hmm.
So not that that's something you can't learn from, but what we try to do is help define that process, like I said earlier. So we learned that the process is extremely important, and on all levels: operations, sales, marketing, support. All of those processes have to be in place. You know, we also learned that franchisees and franchisors need to be willing to be open-minded, sometimes get out of their comfort zone, get out of the standard way they've been doing things, and look at other avenues to help them be successful. I'm not saying that everything we have is going to be the perfect fit, but at least be open-minded to look at it, to see if there's some ways we can help you improve. I mean, in business and in franchising in general, there's always room for improvement. There's always things you can fix and make better.
Agreed.
So that's what we learned. As long as they have an open mind, and sometimes you may think you have the most perfect tool and everything's fine, but if you look deeper into it, you'll find that there are some small little things that could be improved, that could greatly change your business. Um, we also learned that if anything is too complex, a lot of times a franchisee may lose interest. So what we
Mm-hmm.
try to do is create a simple tool that they can understand, grasp, and use every day that is effective for them. We don't want it to be overly complicated, or too much for them to handle, because when it gets to that point, they're really just turned off and they don't want to use it. So what we try to do is really create a simplified, streamlined, easy to use platform that they can use every day
Mm-hmm.
to help them be successful. And at the end of the day, we don't want to just be a vendor. We want to be someone who's in the franchise family who can help them be successful, because if they're successful, we know we're successful, and we're going to have a long-term relationship for years and years to come. So
Yeah, that's great. And I have a personal experience when we tried to implement Salesforce within Management 2000, and
yeah,
it was so complicated. And
right,
we've had people doing things the way that they wanted to do it for years, and ultimately it failed
right,
because nobody was willing to change, but also we know that nobody was involved in the decisions that affect them.
right,
So, that's always a really important thing when franchisors go to implement new systems, getting feedback from the franchise network. whether you utilize it or not is important because people wanted to be included in the
Right.
decisions that affect them.
Right. Exactly. Yep.
Well, Ryan, I want to say thank you and Brandwide for being the guinea pig for this Franchising Stories podcast.
Thank you. It's been great. And as always, it's nice to work with you, Andy.
Definitely. And I'm going to steal this term from Kit Vincent of Fran Man. I loved having you as our first podner. And thank you, everybody, for listening. And we hope you have a great day and come back to listen to the next one.
Thank you.